Hello, everybody, and welcome back. It is time once again for another episode of Blitz Boys. I got Nick and Slade here with me. We're going to go over the wild dominoes that are falling in the coaching football world. And then we're also going to get into our season reviews of every single conference. Today, we're going to do all five group of fives. If you remember before the season, or if you weren't here, we went through every single conference, gave you our predictions on who we thought would be really good, kind of a disappointing team. So now we're going to look back, look at some of our predictions, and look at the conferences as a whole. So let's go ahead and dive into this week's episode of Blitz Boys. Alrighty, as previously mentioned, obviously we talked about it last week, the ripple effects that it would have on the college football world when Nick Saban retired. At the time of the recording, they did not hire a head coach. The only things that we knew for certain were that Dan Lanning had come out and said that he is not taking the job, and Steve Sarkisian was also rumored to not take the job. It was confirmed later that day he was not indeed going to take it. And then Kalen DeBoer, who Slade and I both said were our picks to get the head coaching job, ends up accepting the job for Alabama. And then obviously the Washington job becomes open. They just went to the national championship game. A lot of high expectations around this team. And they go out and they hire a very good head coach in Jed Fish. So that leaves the Arizona head coaching job open. And they have just hired Brent Brennan from San Jose State. For those of you that don't know much about San Jose State or Brent Brennan, he's 31 and 26 in his last 4 years. He does have an overall losing record, but his first, I believe, 3 years there, he went 3 and 22, so he's really turned that program around the last couple of years. They won the conference championship in 2020, and they were also part of a three-way tie this year that had to go to a computer simulation or however they decided that gave us UNLV versus Boise State. Um, and that's how we got the San Jose State on the outside looking in, but still, very respectable job at San Jose State. I think it's a pretty good hire for Washington. But looking at these jobs and everything that's kind of moved around here, who do you think is in the best situation moving forward from either a coaching standpoint or a team standpoint, and who is in the worst situation moving forward? Nick, you weren't here last week, so we'll let you go first.
Yeah, so you want me to answer both before I give
Yeah.
you best and worst, or okay? I just want to make sure. Just want to make sure. So I probably took the low hanging fruit here. And maybe it's not the low hanging fruit. But I actually went with Kalen DeBoer. I would argue that he could be up for best situation and worst situation. The best part of it, obviously, he's going to Bama. Um, decade long powerhouse. Um, Sorry, I lost my place in my notes here. They always had their name in natty conversations. Kids want to play for Bama. Um, but with that being said, filling the shoes of one of the greatest college football coaches of all time is tough work in its own. He'll be faced with a lot of pressure, obviously, kind of like the Urban Meyer to Ryan Day transition at Ohio State.
Mhm.
Not to mention going from the Pac-12 to the SEC. Um, I understand when we look at Pac-12 versus SEC numbers this season, the Pac-12 actually looked favored. But at the end of the day, it's still the SEC. He's going to have to play defenses week in and week out. Not saying he can't handle that, but obviously a lot of pressure and a lot different scenario than what he was in. And for the worst situation, I went with Fran Brown. I chose him because he's got everything stacked up against him. To start with, he's the new coach of the Syracuse football team, and that doesn't exactly draw in recruits. He's also jumping straight from a position coach to a Power Five coach, which is extremely difficult in itself. And then you round that out with the fact that he's taking over a bottom team in a very top heavy ACC. Not really a good recipe for success. I don't wish anything ill against him. I wish success on him. But when you're talking a lot of these coaches and where they came from versus where they've been, I don't see it as a very good situation for him.
Slade, your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, I think Alabama made out great. They, take DeBoer. DeBoer's bringing all of the best parts of Washington with him to Alabama while also trying to retain all of the great parts that were at Alabama before he got there.
Mhm.
Um, my winner, I guess, of the week would be anyone that has Jimmy Sexton as their agent, because they all got massive contracts.
Yeah.
All of them except for James Franklin. Uh, James Franklin had just signed his massive contract last year, and so I mean, there's no topping that, especially when you didn't beat either of the top two guys in your conference this year. He had no leg to stand on in terms of trying to get more money, you know.
Mm-hmm.
But that dude leveraged the Alabama job to get every single one of his people that he's an agent for a contract extension or some sort of bonus, you know.
Mm-hmm.
And then I think the loser for me, and it's, I don't know, I think the lateral move from Arizona to Washington, I think it's a bad move in my part. I think that it was going to be easier in the Big 12 than it's going to be in the Big 10. And like I just said, DeBoer's taking all of the best parts from Washington, along with the recruits that are going to transfer out of there. And we'll have, I think it's like a 30-day window when your coach leaves the school that you're able to then enter the transfer portal, even though the portal is closed, you know? So, I mean, a lot of those guys that were DeBoer's recruits are probably going to do what we see every other team do when this happens and a coach leaves, is they all follow him there or go to different schools.
Mm-hmm.
So I feel like he's in a worse position now going to Washington than he was sitting at Arizona, being able to recruit off the great season they just had.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree. That was my worst situation as well, as going to Washington. As of right now, on both sides of the football, they have two returning starters, and both of those are on defense. Every single offensive starter is leaving, whether it be the draft or the transfer portal. That's their entire offensive line. And as we just saw with Colorado this year, it's very hard to rely on the transfer portal or incoming freshmen to give you a good offensive line, especially this late into the transfer portal season. Everything is picked through. Everybody going into the portal right now is because of their head coach leaving. And like you said, the the move from Arizona to Washington made such little sense. Arizona has absolute studs returning next year, and they're not leaving. They've already come out and said that because the wide receiver coach is getting promoted, most likely. I don't think this is official, so but um, basically their decision rests on what happens with him.
Mm-hmm.
And the rumor right now is he's gonna get promoted to offensive coordinator, and so Fafita, McMillan, the big name guys are gonna be staying at Arizona. So Fish really isn't bringing anything with him to Washington. Like we said, they're gonna be very depleted. I don't see many players going to Alabama just because of the way that DeBoer left. And you know, that does kind of burn a lot of bridges. And why would I want to go play for you somewhere else if you didn't, you know, have the gut to stay here and you know, stay with Washington? So it'll be interesting to see where a lot of those guys go. And I don't have Alabama as my winner right now because we've seen a few guys jump in the transfer portal already. We've also seen a few guys decommit, some big name recruits. I think they've had 2 5 stars already decommit. So that's a little concerning for me. Obviously, there's still time for DeBoer to sit down, talk with them, and be like, hey, you know, we want you to stay here. So I'm not panicking yet on Alabama. But I also, you know, from a team standpoint, like I said, I think Washington is a loser in all of this. I think DeBoer it could also be a loser in terms of coaching because of like Nick had said, no matter what he does, it's he's always going to be in the shadow of Saban. And I'm not saying he's going to go there and fail. I'm not saying he's going to go there and succeed. But in the eyes of the Alabama fan base, if he's not in the SEC championship every year, if he's not, you know, winning national championships one every 4 years or whatever, they're going to consider him a failure. If he's not 10-2 is not good enough for Alabama fans, and we've seen a lot of people talk about this. And so, while again, I think he's a great head coach, he does so much with so little. I think Alabama is going to still be a powerhouse under him. I think just the weight of the expectations is why I put that in my loser bracket for now. But best, go ahead.
One thing I wanted to just make a joke about, and like you had mentioned, DeBoer going to Alabama. Not quite sure how many people are going to follow him, but I do expect a lot of the Washington guys that were still there to enter the transfer portal, you know, even the recruits that were there, you know, to uncommit. But the fact that I think it was Grubb or whatever,
Ryan Grubb, yeah.
the offensive coordinator that he brought with him, they acted as if he already had all the phone numbers because they had recruited all these Alabama kids originally as well. Like, you did not have all of these kids at your school for recruitment. First off,
Yeah.
so it makes 100% sense as at this exact situation why Nick Saban is staying on as like an overseer role or whatever it is, where he has the office. He's still going to be around the football operations. He's just not going to be running it, because they knew that this was going to be a massacre if he just walked away.
Yeah,
I mean,
absolutely.
it was going to be exactly what just happened to Washington, happened at Alabama if he just walked away completely. The fact that Saban is still going to be linked to Alabama, I think, is going to help keep a decent amount of these recruits. And the 12-team playoff, I think, helps DeBoer perfectly because he should be able to put the team into the 12-team playoff, and from there it's just a week by week matchup.
Yeah. Um, before I get into my best situation, um, I do want to point out one thing that's nobody's really talked about. I mean, we were very harsh on him this season as a whole, and what the hell is Tommy Reese going to do? Because he's not being retained. Ryan Grubb is coming from Washington to Alabama, and now all of a sudden he was, a offensive coordinator at one of the most prestigious universities in the country. He helped get his team to the semifinal, whether you want to give him credit for that or not. He's out of a job, and it's very now. One thing, and it's kind of curious and something to look at too in my eyes is the Iowa job is still open. They have not announced anybody, and I'll be curious now. I don't see his mentality towards football and Iowa's kind of meshing, but who knows? Weirder things have happened. But
What
that's
if
kind of another thing to be interested in watching unfold is where does Tommy Reese go? What were you going to say?
what if your prediction on the Michigan job possibly opening up is correct? And uh, what's his name that coached the last 3
More?
games of the season? Yeah, he gets the head coaching job, and in true form, Alabama hired one of the fired Michigan linebackers coaches or something like that before the national
Mhm.
championship. What if Michigan hires Tommy Reese as their offensive coordinator for next year?
Yeah. Um, no, I mean, me personally, I believe that Michigan. I mean, they have enough coaching depth there that and again, I do believe Moore is the next guy in line. I think that's already because a lot of people have already been talking about, well, if Harbaugh does go to the NFL, and I've seen this all over, it's like, everybody's gonna be jumping in the portal from Michigan like we see from everybody else. I really don't think that's the case. I think Michigan has enough of a plan laid out, especially if it's taking this long for Harbaugh to decide that he knows that, listen, if I leave Michigan, they're in good hands with Moore. Um, and I mean, yeah, it's an opening for Reese, and I mean that would be kind of hysterical though because of the fact that he's a Notre Dame grad. He played against Michigan. He coached against Michigan. For him to then leave and essentially go to their former biggest rival. I mean, obviously, I think now USC is their biggest rival, but um, I mean that would kind of be a slap in the face, even more so to the university than when he left the first time a year after saying, "I'm not going anywhere, guys. I'm not going to abandon you," and then he goes to Alabama. Um, but back to my picks here. My best situation, I really think Arizona is still the best situation. They're going into the Big 12, which we said is I feel like still going to be a grueling conference, but definitely not the death machine that the Big 10 is or SEC. They're still retaining most of those guys, like I just talked about. They have absolute studs on offense and defense. The way that they played the second half of the year is bar none. Some of the best football that we've seen. I think they're getting a good head coach too. I mean, we'll have to see what he does in this situation, but given how he started at San Jose State to be able to turn that around, and then, like I said, he has a winning record the last 4 years, one conference championship, was right in the mix for another. Um, I think Arizona is going to be fine, whereas I think we're going to see drop offs with maybe not a big drop off, but definitely a step back from what we see with Nick Saban every year at Alabama to Kalen DeBoer. But I think Washington is about to fall off a cliff, and I think that's the truth. So those are my best and worst situations. Um, Nick, you weren't here. Slade and I talked about this last week, but just really quick, uh, do you see um, Jim Harbaugh? I forgot his name for a second. Do you see Jim Harbaugh staying, or do you see him leaving Michigan?
So I was thinking about this the other day, and I'm a little conflicted about it because one, first of all, as a Washington Commanders fan, we're looking for a head coach. Just got a new GM, and Jim Harbaugh's name is mentioned in every single team that needs a head coach, from Washington down to the local Pee Wee team. Um, However, he's obviously only going to go one place if he doesn't stay. Um, I part of me wants to say, you know what, he caught all this shit for all those years about not beating Ohio State and not even being at the top of the Big Ten, let alone top of college football. He finally wins a national championship. So part of me wants to be like, yeah, I think he's going to stay. He's going to maintain his loyalty. They just won a national championship. He's going to want to run it back, whatever. Um, but the fact that he went through and got that agent or whatever the specific title was to specifically reach out to and be in contact with NFL teams, I think that points in the NFL direction. Obviously things can happen. He might end up staying. Maybe the people that offer him a job he doesn't necessarily like, whatever the case may be. But I think at this point right now, it's leaning more towards him going to the NFL.
Yeah. And we have seen him, I believe it's 2 NFL teams so far that he's interviewed with the Chargers and the Falcons. So again, something that we will definitely keep our eye on. But I don't see this setting as, if he does leave, like I said, I don't see this setting as many waves through the college football world as what Saban has just done. Let's move into our season reviews of every conference. And today, like I had said, we're going to do all 5 group of 5 conferences. Starting alphabetically, we're going to go to the American first. So first up, give me your guys' pick for the most surprising team in the conference, a team that you weren't very high on, or you maybe had finishing middle of the pack and they were right up there contending for the title, anything along those lines. And then we'll get into the disappointing and so on later. But first up, give me your most surprising. Slade, we'll go to you first.
I think it was Memphis. I really kind of had them middle of the pack, I think. And I mean, the fact that they finished 10-3 at the end of the season is quite the season for someone that I thought was kind of going to be around 500.
Right. Nick.
Yeah, so my explanations of these are going to be shitty because I accidentally took the notes as like the group of 5 as a whole. Now, I did pick each individual conference winner prediction for next year, but my most surprising and most disappointing is going to be off a whim, except for the 2 teams that actually wrote down notes on. However, I'd have to say in the American, I kind of wanted to go with SMU. I picked Tulane to win the American. I thought they had the best chance after seeing last season. I thought they were going to be able to build off their successes of last year. Obviously, not a bad season for them, but I think I'm actually going to go with Eastern Carolina. And obviously, as a bad disappointment, 2-10. This is a team that, looking back the past couple years, have kind of built up momentum, have kind of announced themselves within the American Athletic Conference and just fell flat on their face. It seemed like every time we talked about them and they were playing a game that they should have won, they didn't. And again, just overall, just shocked that's wait. I just realized I totally messed that up. It's fine though. Most disappointing. Yeah. We got that out of the way early. Yeah. This is what happens when you don't read George's notes clearly. And on the good side, not on the disappointing side, on the good side, SMU and Tulane are too easy. I like Slade's Memphis pick. I'm actually, you know what? I'm going to go with Navy. Not necessarily, didn't make a bowl game. Not great. But there was a lot of games this year that I felt like they had no business being in, and they at least kept it competitive, won a game or won 1 or 2 of those games that I thought they didn't have any business being in. So while I'm sure they'd like to be making bowl games, I gotta, again, they showed up to games that I didn't think they were going to show up to. So they'd probably be not the easy pick for most surprising.
So my most surprising team, I went with USF, 7-6, 4-4 in conference. They had 8 wins their previous 4 years. They were under first-year head coach in Alex Golesh. This was their first winning season since 2018. I am very excited to see where USF goes in the next couple of years. Again, and if you go back, I think it was a Boca Raton Bowl. I think that's what they played in, but they played Syracuse. They interviewed Alex after the game. And his speech got me fired up, and I'm sure a lot of young guys want to go play for him now. He is a younger head coach. I think he's going to do a great job recruiting. I'm excited to see where USF goes in the next couple of years. So that was my most surprising team. But disappointing. And before we get to Slade's, is I'm right in line with Nick. I had ECU picked as my dark horse contender for the year. I thought last year they played really well. They hung in a lot of games that maybe they weren't supposed to be in. And, another year under Mike Houston, I was like, I love this guy's system. He's going to continue to grow this team. ECU is my dark horse. They're finishing top 4 in the conference, and they finished last in the conference, 2-10, 1-7 in conference. I called for Mike Houston to be fired after the season. So that was my most disappointing team. Slade, your pick.
Yeah, I mean, this one went pretty quick because ECU is mine as well. I mean, I thought that minimum they were going to finish like 5th, 6th in the conference, and to be last is a huge disappointment. And there definitely needs to be changes within the university's football team there.
Yeah, absolutely. Best game. Nick, give us your pick for the best game. If you don't have one,
I don't. Yeah. Did you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Blame it on me. Oh yeah, right there it is.
Slade, your pick for the best game this year in the American.
My resume.
So I picked the best game for. I didn't include that in the in this part. So you give us your best game.
Well, I had 2. Luckily enough for you guys. First up was SMU and Memphis. This was next to last week of the season. This set up basically who was going to get into the American Championship game. And SMU, it came down to the wire. SMU kind of pulled away late. Memphis comes charging back, but it's too little too late. That was a great game. And then I also had Memphis and Charlotte. I think this was the week before. Memphis got caught looking ahead, and Charlotte took them to overtime. It was a fantastic game. I almost went to the game. I was a little upset I didn't go, seeing how everything played out, but 2 great games. Looking forward, give me a team that you guys are kind of not necessarily. You don't have to be picking them to win the championship next year, but just a team that you're excited about, that you think has a bright future, or some off-season storylines going on that you're interested to keep your eye on. I'll give you mine first. I went with Charlotte. We got Biff Poggi. First of all, best name in coaching right now. He's heading into year 2 at Charlotte. They have the number 4 recruiting class in the conference, the number 3 portal class in the conference. So he's going to continue to build this team up. They had a lot of one-possession losses this year. So if they can flip some of those, I expect Charlotte to continue to climb and get better year over year. So I'm looking forward to watching Charlotte next year. Slade.
Yeah, I mean, I had UTSA doing much better this season. Obviously, they didn't do horrible, but I'm kind of looking forward to see what kind of changes they make as a team going into this next season to try and see if they're able to, outperform this season. Because in my opinion, they kind of hit their floor of where I thought they were going to be at, and so I am looking for them to definitely outperform this season next year.
Yeah, another thing to keep an eye on with them is Frank Harris has been there. It feels like forever. And now he's finally going to be gone next year, so it'll be interesting to see what they do at quarterback as well. Nick, do you have any team you're looking forward to in the American next year?
Yes, so luckily for me, at least for the next 5 minutes, I happen to choose SMU as the team that I'm most looking forward to next year. So
but they're not going to be in the American. That doesn't count.
Really?
Yeah, they're going to the ACC.
I should have known you were going to make this difficult on me. Like, they were in the conference, and I am excited to watch them.
Okay, fair enough. Fair enough.
We'll obviously, obviously, new conference.
I hope you didn't pick them as your champion then.
No, I didn't.
Okay, I was going to say, it's like you really fucked up.
No. But yeah, so new conference had a good season, had an exciting season this last season. Obviously, just the opportunity alone to get to watch them against different talent, a better talent pool in general. I can't see what they can. Can't wait to see what they can do. I think they're going to be competitive. I'm not out here saying they're going to win, and anything crazy next year. But I am definitely excited to see how they make the jump next season.
All right. Now give me your champion pick for next year, Nick.
Yeah, so my champion pick, I'm gonna rock with the same champion pick I had this season. I'm gonna go with Tulane.
Slade.
Yeah, I agree. I'm gonna go with the Green Wave.
I'm very high on Tulane still. I am a little concerned with their head coach leaving, but again, Ty Thompson coming over from Oregon, they're going to be, I think, better at the quarterback position, even though Pratt is leaving as well. But just as a backup, just in case you guys took Tulane too, I also think Memphis is going to continue to play very well. They have the number 1 transfer class in the conference, number 3 recruiting class. They have been a machine and continuing to get better and better year over year under Coach Silverfield. I'm excited. So I think we see Memphis Tulane in the championship game again next year. And so I think
So
Memphis
neither one
is
of them book it.
yeah, exactly. So I think Memphis is starting to get back to like that mid 2010s range where we saw them either always fighting for the American Championship. They made it to the New Year's Six Bowl a couple times. I'm excited to see where uh, Memphis goes in the next couple seasons as well. Next up, we have Conference USA. Liberty won it this year. Your pick for most surprising, Nick, I'll give you some more time here. So, Slade, you can go first. Your most surprising team of Conference USA.
My most surprising team was definitely New Mexico State. I did not see a 10-5 season coming out of them, and the fact that uh, they were able to just some of their wins. I mean, they went on the road, they got paid for that big win. Who was it?
Auburn.
Auburn, yeah.
Yeah.
And it just made Auburn the laughing stock. Then Auburn kind of got out of that with the Iron Bowl game against Alabama. But yeah, I definitely didn't see New Mexico State, having this great of a season. Again, I kind of had them more at like the, just over 500. But the fact that they were able to kind of gut out a win like this was pretty good. 7-1 in the conference is really good.
Yeah. No, I mean they were my pick too. Again, they were picked to finish 6th in the conference preseason, and then they wind up going to the conference championship game. And if it's not for injuries in that game, who knows what they do because they were back and forth Liberty all night. I watched that game instead of watching Oregon get their ass kicked. So again, I was heavily invested into that one. If Pavia doesn't go down again, who knows what happens in that. But yeah, and then I think the thing that hurts the most is them and Jerry Kill quote unquote parting ways, where it was Kill kind of got forced out in that whole situation there. So it'll be interesting to see what happens in the future at New Mexico State. Nick, your pick for most surprising.
Yeah, so I also went with New Mexico State. I was looking ahead, just so you know, I didn't just hear who y'all picked. But no, I had them even farther down than what you guys had them. I thought the expectations were a little high for them to start the year, but they not only lived up to those expectations, they exceeded them. I'll say what I was about to say for in a minute.
Most disappointing. Nick, can go ahead and give us yours.
Yeah, so most disappointing, maybe a slight hot take here, but I think there can at least be some agreements. I'm going with Western Kentucky. This is a team that I picked to compete for the CUSA, and while they were only, when you figure New Mexico State, they were only 2 conference wins back behind New Mexico State. They still, I thought they were going to be better. I think everybody thought they were going to be better. Might not put them as most disappointing, but I found it disappointing. I was very conflicted about who I was going to pick at the beginning of the year. Obviously, everybody liked Liberty, but you can't just go through picking all the favorites. So I had them competing better than what they did. They didn't live up to it. So most disappointing.
Yeah, no, I 100% agree with you. That was my pick as well. I picked Western Kentucky to win. Um, they were the preseason favorites on all the sports betting apps as well. They had a ton of returners, including Austin Reed at quarterback. They just had no run game. Their leading rusher didn't even have 500 yards this year. They had a gauntlet to start the season. They stumbled through that, and from there they just could not get any momentum. And then of course they lose to Liberty, New Mexico State, and so on. So difficult schedule for them, and they could just never find any sort of rhythm. Slade, your pick for most disappointing.
I went with Louisiana Tech. I thought that they were gonna be third or fourth in the conference, and they end up going 3-9. Definitely did not see that coming at the beginning of the season, and so yeah, I think that they definitely need to turn around if they're going to expect to compete next year.
Yeah, absolutely. And again, they had a lot of good returners too. Bachmeyer at quarterback, transferred over from Boise State. And I watched them when they played SMU, and that team just looked ugly. They could find no rhythm the entire season. Um, Best game, I went with FIU versus Sam Houston State on October 18th. Double overtime. Sam Houston State was fighting to get their first win of the year. FIU went down to kick the game tying field goal with 5 seconds left. It goes to double overtime. And it was a fantastic game to watch on, I believe it was a Wednesday night. I love me some weeknight football. Looking ahead, a team that you're looking forward to in the upcoming offseason or next year. Uh, Nick, give us yours.
Yes, so I'm going to go with New Mexico State again. Obviously exceeded expectations this year, like we already talked about, and I think that they can continue to do that. I think they're heading in the right direction. Like you said, who knows without injuries where that conference championship game goes? Maybe we see them in it healthy again next year, and maybe the outcome is different.
Slade.
I'm excited to watch. Jacksonville State. I think that the fact that they had a close loss to Mexico State really only got blown out by Liberty, and that game was like 30-15 or something like that. But I was incredibly surprised by the fact that they were tied with South Carolina going into the fourth quarter of that game. And I mean, they got blanked in the fourth quarter and lost by 10. But the fact that they were even tied with them, I mean, everyone was hyping up South Carolina at the beginning of the season. Spencer Rattler, what's his name, Beamer? And,
Shane.
the fact that Jacksonville State and, I throughout the season religiously got Jacksonville State and Jackson State mixed up. But this team is the one that only lost by 10 to South Carolina and was tied with them going into the fourth quarter. I think that they have a lot to build on. They had a lot of great games this year. They had great games against some of these teams that you guys were talking about. Like I said, Liberty only 2-score loss, and they beat Western Kentucky by 3, a team that we thought were going to be really good.
Yeah. I'm looking ahead at seeing what FIU can do in the offseason and next year. They had a strong start to the season, and then I talked about them on our pregame show. I think it was like week 5, and I was like, guys, they're 4-1. Like they've never started like this, and then they proceeded to go 1-7 the rest of the season. So I'm not going to
Way to
talk
go,
about them
George.
next year. I'm going to wait till they at least clinch a bowl game to start talking about them. But they do have the number 2 recruiting class in the conference right now. I think they're building momentum down there slowly. I think it's going to be a lot of fun to watch them in the upcoming season. Your way too early prediction for the 2024 conference champion in CUSA, Slade.
I want to say my worst team in this in Louisiana Tech, but I'm just going to stick with that. I'm going to go with Louisiana Tech. I think that they're going to turn some things around. They're going to be crazy. They're going to get a lot of tight games to go their way.
All right, Nick.
Yeah, I'm going with the kind of safe pick here. For me, it was in between Liberty and New Mexico State. I think there's a very good chance that the conference championship game is a repeat. However, I went with Liberty as my way too early winner, strictly just off of consistency. I think that New Mexico State can get there again, obviously, but Liberty's been there. Liberty's won it, and I think that goes a long way when it comes to championship games like that.
Yeah. I was torn between Liberty and Jacksonville State, and just for the sake of parity, I'll take Jacksonville State. Rich Rod is building a hell of a program down there. They're going to be postseason eligible next year. No ifs, ands, or buts about it. And so I expect them to build off of the momentum they had this season where they win a bowl game in their first every year in the FBS level. I'm excited to see what they can do next year. So I think we see Liberty, Jacksonville State in the championship game, and give me the Cox to win that one.
You
Moving
just love
over,
saying that.
I do. Go Cox. I need to go down to Columbia and give me a shirt that says Go Cox.
Wait, did we talk about that during the season when they played South Carolina then? It was Gamecocks versus the Cox?
It was
The
a Cox
Cox Bowl?
showdown. Yeah.
Oh.
I said I vividly remember saying Go Cox multiple times during the show.
I remember you saying that, but I didn't realize that the two teams I didn't know if we talked about the two teams playing one another.
Yeah. So next up we have the MAC conference. This was probably the one that we had the most fun watching this season. I feel like all three of us actually, for once, I wasn't the only one invested in action. So go ahead and give me your most disappointing team in the MAC. We'll start with Nick this time since he was so prepared.
Yeah. Hold on. Let me make sure that I didn't have. Oh no. Okay. All right. Yeah. Right. All right. Yeah. Good. I wanted to make sure that I didn't actually have notes on this, so I didn't just completely spew out of my mouth for nothing. Most disappointing. I'm gonna have to go with Buffalo. Sitting here looking at how they finished, thinking back on the season. Kind of along the same lines as you talk about Memphis, George.
Mhm.
Buffalo had put together a couple good teams, not necessarily great, but good teams within the recent future. And I'm sure 3-9 is definitely not where they wanted to be at. I thought they would have a little better chance at competing for the MAC, but just in the East alone, they finished the season in fourth place. So I would have to say they would be my biggest disappointment.
Slade.
I went with Eastern Michigan. I can't remember if they were like my dark horse or my
I
champion. I
think you
have to
got
look
picked them.
back. Yeah, I think I did. And so, I mean, the fact that they weren't able to even be first or second in their side of the conference is just pitiful, and just shows that uh, as we get closer to the season, you just never go with any of my picks.
Yeah. No, I had the same exact one for most disappointing. I was very high on them as well. I didn't have them as the conference champion, but I thought with what they were returning, and then I think both sides just really struggled to kind of grasp these new concepts under first year coordinators. They still make a bowl game, first time in school history they've gone to a bowl game in 3 consecutive years. They got their ass stomped 59-0 or 59-10, and so the what I was gonna say is, they've still not won bowl games in back-to-back seasons in school history. Just a fun little note for you to keep track of in the future. Uh, your your most surprising team of the MAC. I just realized I wrote my notes backwards. So that's why I said it backwards, but it's okay. Your most surprising team in the MAC, Slade.
I'm going Miami, Ohio.
God damn it!
Uh,
Did you read my
sorry,
notes?
no, they go 11-3 after they. I mean, their first game of the season is against Miami, and they go out and 38-3 is the score. Now, it's Miami, but Mario Cristobal is their coach, and you wouldn't think that they'd be able to put up, a 35-point differential on a team that goes on to make conference championship game.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I think that was very surprising for me.
Yeah, no, same exact thing. They had that rough start to the season, and coming into the year, they were an afterthought of being a MAC contender behind Toledo, Ohio, or even Eastern Michigan. And then their starter goes down in that first Toledo game. So again, more and more doubts are popping up about them. And then Avion Smith comes in and he took this team. It almost seemed like they played better once he came in. He had 918 total yards as a starter those final 5 games of the regular season, and it leads them to the conference championship. That was definitely surprising to watch in my eyes. Nick, your pick for most surprising in the MAC.
Yeah, so I'm going to do a little duo here. I'm going to go with Bowling Green and NIU. They both finished with the exact same records. Um, Bowling Green going into this season, I didn't have a lot of hopes for. Um, the three teams behind them in the MAC East aren't necessarily contenders, but I thought that at least one of them could have slipped up there. I thought Bowling Green could have been, fourth, fifth on the East side, and then to NIU. Again, we all thought Eastern Michigan was going to be at the very least that second team in the West, if not the first team in the West, if not the first team in the MAC. And NIU was it's sort of right behind them. 3 wins back, but still sitting second in the West. A better season than I thought they were going to have. I thought they could have been at least fourth in the West, and they ended up coming out finishing second in the West. So good for them.
Yeah. For best game, I went with Toledo, Miami, Ohio, the first game on October 21st. That was a lot of fun to watch. We kind of thought at that point that could possibly be a conference championship preview, and sure enough, it was. And it was a great game. Came down to the wire, and that was a ton of fun to watch. A nice little October treat from the MAC. Um, Team that you're looking ahead to, I'll give mine first. I'm looking ahead to Northern Illinois. I'm very excited by again what Nick was just saying. I thought they performed very well this season. They have 3 conference losses by 1 possession, and if you can flip those 3 games, again, they're right there in the MAC title discussion. They're doing a very good job of building that team back up to where the lows that it was at just a few years ago. They have the number 6 recruiting class in conference and number 4 transfer portal class in the conference. Slade, your pick for the team you're looking ahead to.
Yeah, I mean, it's hard to follow that the 1 score loss conference games. I'm doubling down on Eastern Michigan. I'm saying that they're the
Nick.
team I'm looking forward to next year.
Nick.
Yeah. So of course, they were the two teams that I was going to name. I went away from NIU because I was like, oh, George said
You
it.
can rename it. It's okay.
Well, so now it's got me thinking a little bit because there's a couple teams here that, like, we love our action around here, especially after this season. I think Slade and I finally fully bought into the Kool-Aid that George was serving, or that the Mac was serving, I should
Call me
say.
Jim Jones.
George was just the Jim Jones. I thought Slade bounced there for a second. You know what? No, I'm gonna double down on NIU. I like the season they have. I think they're heading in the right direction, and I think they have a very good chance at competing for the MAC.
Your way too early champion prediction for next year, Slade.
I'm gonna go with Miami, Ohio. I think that they have a lot to build on, especially when I didn't expect them to even be in that position this year. So I think that, even if you kind of luck into that position, now you have a lot to build off of.
Mm-hmm. Nick.
Yes, so I'm going to triple down because why not? I'm going to go with NIU. Like I said, I think they're heading in the right direction, and it's the way too early predictions for a reason. So I'm going to go with NIU.
I'm going to go with Toledo. I think with Jason Candle coming back again, his name was heavily rumored with some of the head coaching jobs. He was very attached to Michigan State at first, not through interviews or anything, but everybody thought that's the guy to go to Michigan State and take over. And it has a great season. There was nothing against him as to why he didn't get a Power 5 nod, or I don't know if he just didn't want to. But he's coming back again, and they're returning a lot of great players as well. They also have the number 1 recruiting class and the number 2 transfer class. So I think this is going to be a very pissed off team of the fact that they had a shot at a New Year's Six Bowl. They kind of crumble in the conference championship game. So I think they're going to come back very hungry, very determined. And I think we're going to see some great things out of Toledo next year. Next conference we have is the Mountain West. We mentioned it earlier with San Jose State, but the sheer lunacy of this conference, we end up with a 3-way tie. They go through every single tiebreaker down to the fact that they have to use a computer simulation or algorithm and I swear to God, I want to know what it was.
Computer coin flip.
That maybe
the Wheel of Destiny. They used the Wheel of
Destiny. Could you imagine if they loaded up NCAA 14 revamped, threw the teams in there, and said, "All right, play a round robin until we have a champion"? I think that'd be the best way to do it. But Wheel of Destiny be number 2. But still, kind of fun to watch. Ups and downs throughout the entire year. They had a team inside the rankings twice, Fresno State and Air Force. So give me your most surprising team of the Mountain West. Nick, we'll go to you first.
Yeah, so most surprising, it's pretty easy for me. I had to go with Wyoming. We talked about them all season long from, I don't know, about week 5 on. A great season. They exceeded my expectations. Pretty sure they exceeded you guys' expectations. To finish 9-4, 5-3 in the conference, this was a team that I didn't know if I seen winning 5 games all season, and they won 5 just in the conference. So kudos to them. They're definitely my most surprising.
Slade.
Yeah, I mean, my most surprising, I kind of have 2 bads for this conference because Fresno is super surprising to me. I thought that they were going to be, a top 3 team, and they weren't able to achieve that status this year. So that was very surprising for me. I think that I'm definitely not picking them for next year.
Yeah. So my most surprising team, I went San Jose State. They started 1-5. They lost to Air Force by 25 points. Everything looked dead in the water for San Jose State, and rumblings started appearing about Brent possibly getting fired. To kind of climb the ladder like he did after those first 3 rough seasons, and then it seems like they're right back there. He did a great job of getting this team turned around. They win their final 6 games. They beat UNLV and Fresno State, 2 very good teams in the Mountain West. And so I that was a very surprising result to me after seeing how they started the season. And then to agree with Slade, my most disappointing team, I went with Fresno State as well. Again, they start the season 5-0. They beat 2 Power 5 schools, Arizona State and Purdue. And then they just had ugly losses late in the year to New Mexico and San Diego State, 2 very bad teams in the Mountain West. So not at all what we expected out of Fresno State. Again, 5 weeks into the season, we're talking about Fresno State making a New Year's Six Bowl. And then here they are. They limp into the New Mexico Bowl. They beat up on New Mexico State, but definitely disappointing from where they started. Do you want to give us your other disappointing team, Slade?
Yeah, it's Air Force. I
Yeah.
picked them to win the conference, and I mean they had such a great start to the season.
Yeah.
Then they go out and it looked like they didn't even know how to play football against Army. And from there, it was just downhill slide the rest of the season. I mean, I don't think they won a game until the bowl game against Jackson or James Madison.
Yeah.
It just ridiculous. Every week after Army was a must-win situation because we wouldn't have went to this coin flip, whatever Wheel of Destiny. Had they just won two of those games, and they just couldn't do it. It was baffling to me.
Yeah. Nick, your most disappointing team.
Yeah, I might as well add on to it. Fresno State. I mean, if you want to, like, if the beginning of a football season, if you want to show your team what a disappointing season is, so they know not to do that, to get them hyped up, to play their best, show them Fresno State because I don't remember. I believe they were either favorites or they were top three. I remember that. As far as winning the conference, and they finished. Hold on, let me do some math. This might take me 5 minutes. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, sixth in the conference. So to go from essentially a front runner in your conference to finishing in the middle of it is never the side of history that you want to be on.
Yeah. For best game, I went with Boise State, Colorado State. We actually talked about this last week when we did our top 5 draft for best games of the entire season across college football. I brought this one up. Colorado State came back late. They were down 4 scores. They come back. They throw a Hail Mary at the last second to win it as well. Just a wild game. Team you're most looking forward to or looking ahead to some storylines for the Mountain West, Slade?
Uh, I'm hoping that Fresno finds something to, change some things up, but I don't see it happening.
Nick?
Yeah, I'm gonna go with Wyoming. Like I said earlier, I think they're heading in the right direction. 9 wins last season. I think they have a chance to, to push that to 10 wins, hit the double digits. And that's a huge leap from, where they were just the past couple of years. So looking to see how they respond to such a good season.
Yeah. For me, I went with UNLV. They had the most wins this year, 9 since 1984 when they were not an FBS school. So outstanding. It was great to see them have success, and it looks like they're getting ready to build upon it. They have a great head coach there. They brought in the number 3 recruiting class in the conference, number 1 transfer class. So I'm expecting UNLV, and especially with how that conference championship game went at home, where they kind of got stomped a little bit by Boise State. I think they're going to come out very motivated for next season. They also looked pretty good in their bowl game against Kansas. They didn't win. They lose by 2 possessions, but still, I thought they showed flashes of looking pretty good. So I'm excited to see where UNLV goes next year. You're way too early conference champion prediction, Slade.
Yeah, UNLV. I mean, I think that they kind of lost some games that they shouldn't have, and I think that they're able to capitalize on that this upcoming season. It should be a much better result for them.
Yeah.
No coin
Nick.
flip.
Yeah, Nick.
I'm gonna go with San Jose State. Well, I probably will forget it at some point, but to this day, I remember week 0 when we had Rico on, and he told all of us, "Watch out for San Jose State." And here they were at come the end of the season, and I think that there's a better chance that they go up than there is that they go down. And I think that I wanted to. I'm not gonna lie to you. I had Fresno State written down, and I couldn't do it to myself. So I had to go with my second choice, which was Fresno State
I'm going to go with Slade. I'm going to go with
or
UNLV as well.
San Jose State. But you knew what I was talking about.
But yeah, no, I just think UNLV is building something too good there to look down upon. And it's in my eyes, it's theirs to lose next year. So I'm going to go with UNLV. Last but not least, we're going to talk about the Sun Belt. Again, very fun conference. I got to go to my second Sun Belt game this year. I went to go see App State and Marshall play. So give me your most surprising team, Nick. We'll go to you first this time.
Yeah. So slightly a hot take, I guess, when you're talking surprising. I went with Troy, and not because that they were a bad team last year and they all of a sudden were a good team. Obviously they won the conference last year. Repeating as conference champions in Division I football is difficult enough, especially in these group of 5 conferences, because the talent pool is kind of more spread out throughout the group of 5 schools, where you think of Power 5, you get the Georgias and the Bamas and all that. So to repeat is difficult enough. And then at the start of the season, while I had respect for Troy and what they had there and thought that they could be good, I thought there were other teams within the conference that could kind of knock them down. And Troy just continued to overcome it, 8-1 in the conference. And you know, not that necessarily the final end result is the surprise, but just the idea to be able to put that consistency together 2 years in a row.
Yeah, absolutely. And to your point, like you said, I mean, with the talent being more spread out, but also I feel like it's hard to keep your best talent because of the transfer portal and the way it exists now. I mean, they lost their best wide receiver. Tej Johnson went to Oregon, and they were still able to produce at such a high level. It speaks a lot to how good of a coaching staff they have there. Slade, your pick for the most surprising team.
I went with App State. I think that they were just in such a weird position. I mean, there's is James Madison going to get to be bowl eligible at the end of the season, or are they going to be eligible for the conference championship? What is the eligibility for James Madison? App State goes to North Carolina, they lose in overtime. They play James Madison, they win in overtime. They lose to Coastal. It's just such a weird season for them, and then to play in the conference championship game and lose by like 20 points is just very surprising. It was just a weird season for App State, I feel like.
Yeah. My most surprising, I went with Texas State. They were picked to finish 6th in the division. They go out week 1. They beat Baylor by 11 points. They had late stumbles that kind of kept them from achieving more in their season. But still, Texas State's never a program that's been associated with success in any way, shape, or form since they came to the FBS level. But here they are. They make their first bowl appearance in school history. They win their first bowl game in school history. So, very surprising to see Texas State have the success that they did. Your most disappointing team, Slade.
Yeah, I went South Alabama. I think that I picked them to win this, and again, it was a losing battle. They started out with a 20-point loss to a conference rival, and then they end the season with like a 10-point loss to Texas State, or Texas State, right? Yeah. So I mean, it was just, I think they lost like 50-40 to Texas State. Just not what I was expecting. I really expected a lot more from them. Now they lost their coach. It's quite the season, and it was disappointing from where I had them at picked at the beginning of the season.
Yeah. Nick.
Yeah. So sorry, I accidentally closed out of that. For the sake of parity, I had also gone with South Alabama, but this gives me a good opportunity to mention something that the team itself didn't necessarily have a disappointing season, but the way that it went down was disappointing. And I'm going to go with JMU. We talked about it when it happened. They had everything right in their hands. They were begging to be postseason eligible. Kept getting denied. They went on and lost that game late in the season, which in the grand scheme of things didn't matter. They ended up making a bowl game anyway. But that was kind of like, we're going to prove to you that we belong. And then they lost that game and then turned around, made the bowl game and lost that game as well. So while the season as a whole wasn't necessarily very disappointing for them, 11-2 is a good season, especially coming from a Penn State fan. I feel like I'm just defending myself here. But just the way that it went down and the way that they had the opportunity to really prove themselves and failed twice. Looking back at it, we begged for them to be postseason eligible, and now looking back, I'm like, I wasted my breath on that. They didn't deserve it. So, thanks, Slade, for giving me the opportunity to get that out.
I like that because I agree. Right before they played App State, we had all did our picks, and I said, I don't know, I have a weird feeling they're going to lose this week or next week, and it's going to screw the whole thing of them having the opportunity to join UCF and say like, oh, we're the undisputed, national champions, right? We never lost, and it's funny because they had the chance. Florida State had the chance. Florida State just decided they weren't going to send even a full roster out on the field. They sent 9 guys onto the field against Georgia. But yeah, I like that pick, and yeah.
I mean, to be fair, they weren't trying to claim national championships. They just wanted the opportunity to play for a conference championship and possibly the
Right, but during College Game Day, because they were there for that game, they were saying about how like, well, all we can do is win all the games on the schedule, and
Yeah.
at that point, if they don't let us be bowl eligible, at least we can, claim PMT from Barstool
Yeah.
was like, you know what, we'll claim the same thing UCF did. If we go undefeated and they don't let us be bowl eligible, we won all our games. We're national champions.
Yeah. My most disappointing team, I'm with Marshall. This is 2 years in a row now. They have a very hot start to the season, and then they just kind of fall on their face. They started 4-0 this year. They were hanging with NC State. They lose that game, and then their next 4 straight. Um, I I don't understand how you can play as well as they do at the beginning of the year and just completely fall apart down the stretch. It became a serious question if they were going to make a bowl game. And again, starting 4-0, they had to get two kind of one of the wins. I would say bounced their way late, but still, that was my most disappointing team for the Sun Belt. Best games, I have two here again. I went with App State and JMU. We just talked about it again. The atmosphere that was there, college game days at James Madison. It was a ton of fun to watch that, and then the game was fantastic as well. JMU comes back from down big, goes to overtime, and then App State walks it off. And then another App State game was App State Wyoming on September 21st. Um, Came down to the wire. Great game to kind of be right at the beginning of the year. Team you're most looking forward to, Nick.
Yeah. For the sake of George not yelling at me, I'm not going to go JMU. Although I am, intrigued how next season is going to go for them. But really, I think I'm going to go with App State. This is a team that has kind of been on that cusp the last 2-3 years, and I'm interested to see if they can finally take that next step, and find themselves in a conference championship game, maybe win a conference championship. I feel like they've had so much potential and so much talent the last couple of years that they deserve better than what they've gotten. I think this year they had the team to win the conference. Just a few things didn't go their way. So I'm interested to see if they can cap it off next year.
Slade.
I'm going Coastal. I think that was your pick, actually, George, to win this conference at the beginning of the season. I think that's who I'm looking forward to seeing next season. I think that they're able to kind of roll out as a dark horse and maybe surprise some people.
Yeah. I'm going to go with Texas State. I talked about them earlier. Coach Kinney is building a great program there. In just his first year, again, takes them to their first bowl game and wins it. They have more transfers incoming. I saw they signed a pretty good quarterback. I can't remember where he was from. Um, but they also have the number 7 recruiting class in the conference. I think they're building something special down there at Texas State, and it could become a team that begins to threaten for the title every year. Like I said, they lost a couple of those conference games late in the year. If they can flip those games, who knows where this team's at? You're way too early. Champion prediction for next season, Slade.
I'm going App State.
I'm going to go with App State as well. Nick, who do you got?
Well, I was going to go with App State, but now I can't jinx it. So I'm going to go ahead and go for Troy with the three-peat.
All right, why not? So that concludes our 2023 review of the Group of 5 conferences. Next week, we'll be back. We'll do an in-depth dive of the ACC, and we'll begin our Power 5 conference reviews. We'll also bring you any other news or coaching news that breaks. We'll keep our eye on Jim Harbaugh and so on. So hopefully you guys join us next week. We hope you enjoyed the episode this week. We had a lot of fun bringing it to you guys. Make sure you hit like and subscribe for more college football content here on YouTube. Check out our social medias. They've been scrolling across the bottom the entire episode. You also see them at the end in our outro video. We have an exciting video in the works. It should be on the way next week, where we simulated if the FBS used the FCS style of playoffs. So we hope you guys enjoyed that. It's been a lot of fun to do it. We're going to work hard on getting that edited and out the door. So thank you again for your support, and we will see you guys in the next video.